Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Morning, we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 7. Etasmin me mano vidvan Kidyate jnana sankate Tanna paranudavibo Kasmalam manasam mahat Etasmin me mano vidvan Kidyate jnana sankate Tanna paranudavibo Kasmalam manasam mahat Etasmin me mano vidvan Vidyate jnana sankate Tanna paranudavibo Kasmalam manasam mahat Etasmin in this may my mana mind vidvan O learned one Kidyate is troubling Ajnana nescience Sankate in distress Tat therefore Na my Paranuda clear up Vibo O great one Kasmalam illusion Manasam relating to the mind Mahat great Translation O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. Translation, please repeat. O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. Purport. Such mental bewilderment as represented here by Vidura takes place for some living entities, but not for everyone. For if everyone were bewildered, there would be no possibility of a solution by higher personalities. Etasmin me mano vidvan kidyate jnana sankate tanna paranuda vibho kasmalam manasam mahat. O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. So Vidura is addressing Maitreya Muni, and he addresses him as, O great, Mahat, O great, learned, O great and learned one. So this is... when one is great, one can be great in many ways, but one can be great in qualities. It actually said that one should give respect to someone who's advanced in knowledge, and especially here, in transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge, and someone who's very advanced in tapasya, austerity. Someone who's got a high position in society should be given respect. And someone who is very elderly. Normally these are four types of persons. they are to be given respect. Maitreya Muni, he is very great in so many qualities, and he's very learned also. He's very elderly. So Vidura addresses him just rightly. This is very important in spiritual advancement, one has to be in a proper mood. The other day we were on some devotees, disciples of Kadambakana Maharaj, and invited myself and Vasu and Krishna Rupa also went. Quite a few others. We went on. They hired one of those river boats, and they had Vyasa Puja for His Holiness Kadambakana Maharaj. His Vyasa Puja day is in April, but they could only do it at this time. And so many disciples were coming forward with homages. And the main theme that I picked up was that one of gratitude and one of great respect to their Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Kadambakana Maharaj. So it was a nice day on the boat, and mainly we were inside chanting and so many homages. And I said a few words, and Vasu said a few words, Krishna Rupa said a few words, and others were offering their actual homages to the Guru Maharaj, and we had Pushpanjali and the Guru Puja. So this is a very nice tradition in the Parampara system, and it's very much required that one be humble. One be humble and offer respect and gratitude. We are not, in this world, we're not very humble, especially in Kali Yuga. I speak for myself, mainly puffed up, very proud, humble to no one. But everyone should give us great respect, and so on and so forth. So the whole process of devotional service is meant to develop humility and gratitude and that respect. And indeed, the whole program, then when we come in the temple room, we bow down to the deities, we bow down to our spiritual master. We offer obeisances to other Vaishnavas, Vanchakalpataru every morning, offer obeisances. So this helps. This is kind of external, but it's external that helps with internal. You do something long enough, then it just may have an effect internally. So just like coming before the Guru, we go pay obeisances, we go flat, dandavats. That's and before the Guru. And Prabhupada one time he said that is a very humble position. One is very vulnerable when one puts his head in front of someone's feet. You can get kicked in the head. You know, the Panihati festival where, who was it that Raghunath came and paid his obeisances and to Lord Nityananda. And the Lord placed his feet right on his head because he got some mercy. But so very vulnerable when you're doing like that. But it is said in the spiritual tradition, this is wanted. Because if one is too proud, then it is going to be very difficult for them to make spiritual advancement. Very, very difficult. You know everything already. And you've got an attitude of great pride. It is not very likely you'll hear very well. In fact, I was talking to one of my godbrothers, and he said he went away from the Krishna consciousness for a long time, and he said he used to go to this function and that function and that function. He said so many people were talking, and even in a group talking, but really no one was really listening to each other. It was just like they were talking at each other. It's like, it's your turn now. Sometimes they just jump in and talk over the top of the other one, and so on and so forth. But there wasn't that mood, generally speaking. And of course, there are some people who are more in the mode of goodness. They are more in the mode of goodness. They quite have gratitude. They have respect. They've got some sort of humility to them. But even that mode of goodness, especially in Kali Yuga, is very limited. So the amount of humility that's needed to actually make a proper spiritual advancement is very great. And therefore, we come together, and it is mentioned, Famna Sandachiro Datra. There's that verse, Famna Dashito, what is it? Oh yeah, Dushtaram, Nishtitirushtatam, Kalim Satvaharam Pumsam, Karnadar Ivaranam. This is a very nice verse from the Bhagavatam, of course. We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as the captain of the ship. For those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. This, of course, was spoken by the sages at Naimisharanya to Sudha Goswami. So they're expressing their appreciation. You're the captain of the ship. We have met your goodness by the will of providence. So it's very much needed. And so here Prabhupada actually comments that he says that, first of all, he talks about the mental bewilderment of the living entities. This is, now, my mind is, this is Vidura's, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience. So one thing, the ignorance of the world puts one in illusion. They forget who they actually are as the spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. They forget all that. And then they act in so many different ways. So by acting in so many different ways, there'll come happiness and distress. So happiness and especially distress, misery is the word mentioned here, or previously, the misery in the previous verse. The living entities act in, or the living entities' activities result in misery, misfortune and misery. And so they're acting in the world because of the ignorance. And then there's misfortune. It's an interesting word, misfortune. Fortunate means good things start to happen. But when there's misfortune, then so many bad things, it is misfortune, unfortunate, misfortune, unfortunate. You're not very fortunate. But when someone is very fortunate, it is kind of thought that, oh, good things happen. Of course, what people think of as good things in the mature world is, it's relative. What will be good for some will be bad for the other. But the very same thing that's good for you will be bad for the other. So it's kind of a relative. It's not really good fortune. Good fortune starts really on the spiritual platform. So, but people think, I'm having a run of good fortune at the moment because things are going well in this way and the other. But it's all kind of a relative thing. It will be there and it will go, and then of course the bad, the misery, the distress. So it's one thing we're in ignorance because of illusion. And then when we get all this distress and misery, then it becomes even more. We become even more illusion, having to deal with the misery. It's one thing being illusion just by forgetting who we are, and that we're spirit, soul, a part and parcel of Krishna, and we think we're the body. We're something. I'm a cat. I'm a dog. I'm a tree. I'm a man. This is all illusion. And then when we act, we create the so-called fortune or misfortune, and then we have to deal with all the results of that. So that creates even more illusion and bewilderment. Now, interestingly enough, in the previous verse, it was mentioned about the position of the Supreme Lord. Now, if the Supreme Lord is traveling with every living entity, and how is it, and this is the question of Vidura to Maitreya, how is it that the living entity's activities result in this misfortune and misery? You would think that if God is with us everywhere, how is it that he allows all this misfortune and misery to come upon each and every living entity? So this is more or less the question of Vidura. And then in this verse, he's saying here that you are very great and you are very learned, and therefore I request you to clear it up, clear up this illusion. Now here, Prabhupada goes on to say that this mental bewilderment as represented by Vidura takes place for some living entities, but not for everyone. For if everyone were bewildered, there would be no possibility of a solution by higher personalities. So we have these great personalities, Maitreya Rishi, great and learned one, Mahatmas. Thank God for people like this. Otherwise, if everyone was an illusion, there's no chance of coming out of it. And so here, the Prabhupada says that Vidura is representing this type of living entity who is bewildered, and is bewildered and wants to come out of it. Now, this is a sign of intelligence. Of course, there are some who are bewildered and in misery and in distress, and they don't even know. They can't even understand that they're in illusion, bewilderment, and misery. Because they don't know, because of ignorance, they don't know anything else. They just accept that this is the life. And one can adjust to so many things in life. And I was talking to Dhaneshwar, who recently had the hip operation. Now, before he was having so much trouble with his hip, and he was just walking and hobbling along, and there was some pain there. And he said that, was scheduled to have the operation because of COVID. So I had to live with this for years before I actually could have the operation. So I found after a time I just kind of adjusted and kind of forgot about it as if it was kind of normal. Once I had the operation, then they fixed up the hip, and I said, wow, there's a whole new life here. And and then I was talking to Yadashrestha in Perth, who had prostate problem, and everything was enlarged prostate, and then he was suffering and so much. And then he said, I just adjusted to it, thought it was kind of normal after. I just kind of forgot about it. And then when he had the operation, he said, wow, what a difference. So people adjust because they're in ignorance, and they, of course, are living. They want to survive in the world, so they just adjust. So the misery can be becoming more and more and more and more and more, but they kind of just adjust, and they just think that's what life is. So that's unfortunate, and they don't understand that how they're bewildered, how they're in illusion. That's very, very unfortunate. So Vidura is not like that. He's actually a liberated soul, and so that really what's going on here is one liberated soul is as putting this type of question to another liberated soul. So Prabhupada is saying here, not all are on the level of being illusioned or bewildered or in distress and misery. Some are liberated, and of course we know. There are two types of living entities in the world, Krishna says. One is the fallible and one is infallible. And of course, he's talking to Arjuna. This is in the 16th chapter. One is fallible, one is infallible. Those who are with Krishna, connected always with Krishna, they come to the infallible. And those who are in the material world, illusion, they are fallible. And they will have to undergo the trials and tribulations of life in the material world. So those who become infallible, being reconnected with Krishna, there is a process to be followed to come to that position. And not, generally speaking, not everyone can come to this position immediately. One has to come, there's three levels of devotees who come to being there. Of course, there is the Nitya Siddha. Nitya Siddha is someone who is an eternally liberated person. Generally, they come to this world on the mission on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to uplift those who are Nitya-bhata, those who are conditioned souls. So they are very special living entities. Of course, Krishna himself comes, and the different incarnations of Krishna, they come. They are also Nitya-siddha. They are eternally liberated. They can never be affected. And sometimes it appears they're just doing things in the world, but that's their leela and so on and so forth. So they come, and the Nitya Siddha devotees also come. Then there's another type of living entity who can come to the position of Nitya Siddha, but they're not immediately Nitya Siddha. And Prabhupada refers to them as Kripa Siddha and Sadhana Siddha. We've heard these terms before. And interestingly enough, now Kripasiddha means given the mercy by Krishna, or now Prabhupada actually in the 8th canto and other places, he gives some examples of devotees who are considered Kripasiddha devotees. And he actually gives the example of get by the mercy of the Guru. So one can be Kripasiddha and come to Nityasiddha, eternally liberated, by either the mercy of Krishna or the Guru or great saint, devotee, or combination of both. He explains this. Prabhupada's explaining a combination of both. So he gives the example of Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj, he says, is an example of a Kripasiddha. Kripasiddha because he first of all, he born in the Asura family, and he didn't undergo necessarily any sadhana, and he wasn't actually considered Nityasiddha at that point. But when Prahlad Maharaj, who was Nityasiddha, appeared to him, he blessed him, and by that kripa, by that mercy, he came to the position of a Kripa Siddha. He started to change. He got the mercy of Prahlad Maharaj. And then later on, he got the mercy also of Lord Vamanadev. So both by the mercy, what is that verse? Bhakti Lata Bij, Guru Krishna Prasadi by Bhakti Lata Bij. So Guru Krishna, one can get the mercy of the Guru and Krishna together. So Bali Maharaj, Prabhupada gives him as an example, Bali Maharaj, of a Kripasiddha, who got the mercy of, first of all, of Prahlad Maharaj, and again then got the mercy of Lord Vamanadev. He also gives the example, so these are very elevated souls to start with, but they weren't like in the category of like, at that point in time at least, Mahabhagavat Nityasiddha. They got the mercy. Prahlad Maharaj gave the mercy to Bali, and then Lord Vamana. He also gives the interesting example of the wives of the Brahmanas. The wives of the Brahmanas who didn't necessarily do all the ritualistic activities and the sadhana activities and so on that their husbands were following, didn't strictly follow that, but they got the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's an example, he says, of someone, a Kripasiddha, getting the mercy directly of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are very unique examples. There's the more obvious examples that Prabhupada gives. More obvious examples, he gives the example of Jagai and Madai. Jagai and Madai with Lord Nityananda. By the mercy of Lord Nityananda, they were born in the Brahmana family, but they were rogues and thieves and dacoits and so on and so forth, rascals, miscreants. They had weren't practicing like they weren't practicing any ritualistic Brahmana activities. They were rogues, and so. But by the mercy, even though Madai attacked Nityananda, later on he was able to get his mercy, and by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, he became very elevated. Later on, of course, he was asked by Lord Nityananda to do some service. But Srila Prabhupada gives Jagai and Madai as examples of Kripasiddha. And also there's the example of, also in the case of Lord Nityananda with the son of the Brahmana, who was that dacoit and thief, who saw Lord Nityananda dancing in the Kirtan party, wearing necklaces of pearls and jewelry and this and that. But he was a leader of the dacoits, and he thought that he went and actually joined the Kirtan party like that, but he was all kind of, scoping out the possibility of stealing those things. Although he made a show of dancing and everybody was really checking out exactly what Lord Nityananda was wearing and making a plan. And he went back to his gang, of course. And this story has been told many times, how he went back and said that, I know he's staying, where is he? Hiranya Pandit, I think Hridai Pandit. He was staying at the house of Hridai Pandit, a little bit on the outskirts of Mayapur. And so Lord Nityananda was staying there. And so I know he's staying, because he was in the Kirtan party, so he knew they all went over there. And so he said later on tonight, after they've eaten and after they fall asleep, we'll go and robbed them. But of course, when it happened, they were taking a nap, waiting for everyone to sleep, and of course they posted one person to stay awake and wake them up when everyone else was sleeping. And but it is said that Lord Nityananda sent Nidra Devi there to cause them all just to fall asleep. So they all fell asleep and nothing happened, and they were all, blaming each other. And the next time they came back, and there was all these big guards and that, right? Wasn't it the next time? All these big guards. Where did these fellows come from? Even one of them could take all of us on, right? And so we better not. Let's come back another time. And so then the next time, then there was like this lightning and hail and all these things happened. And then at that point in time, somehow or other, this son of the Brahmana, he got the realization that Lord Nityananda is not an ordinary person. He must be. How do all these things happen? He must be the Supreme Personality of God. So by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, at that point, he became, as another example of Kripa Siddha. And then later on, he became enlightened by the mercy of Lord Nityananda as to the position of the Lord. And then later on, he went there and bowed down before the Lord. And the Lord accepted him and gave him instruction that you don't do any of these things anymore. You follow the straight and narrow, and all those who are thieves and rogues, your own gang and anyone else, you preach to them and tell them not to do that, but to follow the holy path. And so here's another example. Kripa Siddha, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda. There are kind of perhaps more obvious examples than Bali Maharaj and the wives of the Brahmins. But these are examples of Kripa Siddha. And of course, the examples of Kripa Siddha, as I'm kind of looking at one right here, we weren't following any sadhana or anything like that. And by the mercy of Prabhupada, we were picked up. And of course, then we were engaged in sadhana. Now, sadhana siddha, generally, in the Vedic system, one goes to the Gurukula and then being engaged in the ashram of the Gurukula, the Guru engages those boys in sadhana. And so this is more traditional sadhana siddha, and by following that sadhana very strictly, one becomes elevated in spiritual life. So now one can be kripa siddha and then later on start following sadhana. So that type of person would be a combination of kripa siddha and then later on sadhana siddha. So combination of both. But starting with kripa siddha, definitely most of us. Of course, I know that Ram Prasad and Alanath, they are more like the Nitya Siddhas, but just in disguise, biding their time to come forward. And then they manifest their true nature. But as far as myself, definitely Kripa Siddha. And then we come to the sadhana siddha. Then we imbibe the activities of sadhana. So Kripa Siddha, sadhana siddha. So we take the help, and then one can come gradually to the point of Nitya Siddha. So once one has come to the point of Nitya Siddha, then they're accepted as a Nitya Siddha, eternally liberated personality. And there's no difference between those who are eternally liberated and someone who's come from being conditioned through the process of either Kripa Siddha, sadhana, or a combination of both, and then come to the Nitya Siddha. There's no difference. And I think that one time there was an example, I think this is from Prabhupada, that he gave, like the man who's with the crutches. The man, he's walking, but he's using the crutches. There's one man, he's just walking normally. Other man, he's walking with the crutches. So when you look, this one has got some disability, he has to use the crutches like that. But after time, when the when the leg heals, then he doesn't need the crutches any longer. And then and so later on, if someone just sees the two men walking, and then they just see them walking, they don't understand that before he had crutches. Or even if before they knew he had crutches, they don't even consider that because now he doesn't need the crutches. He's just like the one who never needed the crutches. Understand this example? He's exactly like the one who never needed the crutches in the first place. The first one needed the crutches, but now his legs healed. He doesn't need the crutches anymore. So he's the same as the other one now. There's no, and one shouldn't discriminate. Oh, he had crutches before. No, he's not the same as the one who didn't have crutches before. He had the crutches before. So one shouldn't make the distinction. Oh, the one who is eternally Nitya Siddha, he is much more superior than the one who's come to be the Nitya Siddha. No, once one has actually come to be the Nitya Siddha, then he's Nitya Siddha. Of course, what level of Nitya Siddha, that's a whole other thing. You know, because there's levels, as explained by Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas. He explains the Mahabhagavat, and then he explains that first class Mahabhagavat, second class Mahabhagavat. He gives levels, and that is always increasing also. You know, what level one's on of liberated personality, that's another thing. But as far as liberated personality, so by now, Vidura is approaching Maitreya. He's a very qualified person, and he addresses him as such. Very good. He shows the example of how to approach a great personality. We approach them with respect. We're very humble, and you're learned, and because of that, you please that person. Oh, this person is very humble. This person is willing to hear this knowledge. And it's not nahi jnanana saddesham pavitam iha vidyate tatsayam yoga samsit. Kalanatma vidyate. Transcendental knowledge is actually understood in terms of spiritual understanding. It's not just, now there's knowledge in the world. So many people have got knowledge of so many things. But what's spoken about here is transcendental knowledge. And transcendental knowledge in terms of spiritual elevation and spiritual. So that's another thing. Material knowledge is relative, is temporary. It comes and goes, and people go through the life what they knew before. Maybe they forget it. They don't know it now, and so on and so forth. Or that knowledge changes. What we knew before, or now we have to change it a little bit because it's not applicable to now. So it's always changing. So that's material knowledge, always changing, always temporary. But spiritual knowledge, that is eternal. So that's one has to come to this position, and therefore Krishna tells Arjuna, "Nahi jnanana sadvisham pavitram iha vidyate." There's nothing more sublime than coming to the position of transcendental knowledge. One has to come to this, and one really can only come by the mercy of these great mahats. And when one gets the mercy of these great mahats, then the mind can come out of the bewilderment. Otherwise, there's no chance. We'll be just eternally nityabada, eternally entangled in the world. There's no possibility. One actually has to take help from someone who's above it, either Krishna himself or his representative. So Vidura is showing by a very good example. He is not himself illusion. He's asking these questions for the benefit of everyone else. This is quite common. We read this throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, he asks questions on behalf of the ordinary living entity. So these are a very great person, both the speaker and the listener, that person who's inquiring and the person who is being inquired from are very great personalities. So, etasmin me mano vidvan, our minds become bewildered and our intelligence is bewildered on so many levels. We're bewildered, we're illusioned. We have to deal with so many different types of illusions and distresses and so on and so forth. Ajnana, this word is used. There's jnana, knowledge, and ajnana means nescience. So one can only overcome it, as I said, by taking shelter of one of these great personalities. I'll read this again. Etasmin me mano vidvam kidyate jnana sankete tanna para nudavibo kasmalam manasam mahat. Oh, great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. Does anyone have any question or comment? Yes.
So Maharaj, comparing the process sadhana siddhi and Kripa siddhi, it would seem that the sadhana siddhi, it requires your effort, whereas Kripa siddhi, it's, you're just getting the mercy. But surely it's not simply our effort alone. There needs to be some mercy there. for your sadhana to be successful.
Yeah, I'd say the mercy has to be there in both cases, but I think the extent of the mercy you could probably talk about. The extent. And it's not even the extent. I think it's, you know, because someone does the sadhana and they put the effort, then one pleases the Supreme Personality and His representative, and by their mercy, one can gradually improve their position. Now, in the case of the Kripa Siddha, they didn't do anything. There's no real reason that Krishna gives the mercy, but out of his, that's why it's referred to as causeless. There's no cause to it, causeless. He just gave the mercy and bestowed upon him that enlightenment, just like Jagai and Madai and that the son of the Brahmana who wanted to rob Lord Nityananda. He wanted to not only not know anything, he wanted to attack Lord Nityananda and attack all the devotees and steal all their belongings, but he got the mercy. So I think it's just that type of thing, you know.
So you have the story of the Brahmana and the cobbler of Narada Muni. So the cobbler normally wouldn't be practicing any sadhana, but he got liberated, whereas the Brahmana, at least externally, was practicing something, but he didn't get liberated. So I guess that's Kripa Siddhi also.
So yeah, so it's not just you know, I had this conversation with a Christian man once when I was out selling books, and he said it's not by acts alone. Where you people, you talk about you know, the karma and your activities, but in Christianity it is not by acts alone, it's by the mercy of Jesus. I said, yes, we also say the same thing. But God is pleased by your activities also. It's not that we shouldn't think that, well, God will just do everything and I don't have to do anything at all. No, He wants to see what is your desire. So I think that's the. So I was speaking like that to the Christian. He was trying to criticize. Now you people just think it's just by your activity, but actually it's by the mercy of God, only by the mercy of God. I said no, we do think like that. But I said, but the greater understanding. It's a combination. It's a combination of both. Yes, one final question. I think we've got time for.
Thank you for the class, Mark. You mentioned about when we have certain condition, you're talking about Dhaneshwar Prabhu, that you start thinking that's normal when you have a condition that's not your normal state. So how would we apply that as aspiring devotees? Because we are also conditioned, we have different things, emotional stuff or physical health and things like that. So in spiritual life, how do we adjust or not adjust? Like how do we apply that principle?
How to adjust?
Yeah, you said that we in material life we make adjustments and then we think that's normal and we live with it like that.
Oh yeah. Well, one needs some mercy. Either Kripa, Guru Krishna, Prasadi Bhaya, Bhakti Lata Bija. You know, one needs the contact of a greatly enlightened personality. Then by that contact, that little bit of purification, one changes their attitude can change. And so we start to realize, you know, even though we're acting in the world and just get used to so many miserable conditions sometimes, you know, we just adjust and just think it's normal. But then when we come in contact with transcendental knowledge, we understand, oh, there's something far, far greater. You know, just like I was giving the examples of those people who had problems with the hip, like Dhaneshwar. Then when he had the operation, he was getting a bit used to just hobbling around. But then he said, oh, what a difference. He immediately saw the difference. So because people are in ignorance, they don't have this transcendent knowledge. Therefore, they don't understand. But as soon as they come in contact with it, then they can change. So therefore, this movement is meant to give this transcendental knowledge and deliver it all over the world. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bo.